When you get transported to another world, would you use your knowledge from your old world to better your struggles in this new life? Well, these guys do, from becoming a hero to forging their own empire, to using said knowledge to defeat gods or just living a slow and easy life. In this video, I'm gonna show you some anime where the main character uses modern knowledge in the world they got Isekaied. First on this list is Arifureta, from Commonplace to World's Strongest. To cut it short, Nagumo and his entire class get one-way sended to a fantasy world, where they have to beat labyrinths made by mysterious people called Mavericks. Where, in these labyrinths, Nagumo is sent flying after a misfiring magic beam which is deemed an accident. Now presumed dead, Nagumo has to fight his way out to survive. After making his way to the end of the labyrinth, Nagumo meets a vampire girl named Yue. Now the last of her kind, she decides to stick with Nagumo, becoming lovers and travel companions. Thus begins Nagumo's journey to become stronger, in order to return to his original world. In order for Nagumo to accomplish his mission to survive and return back home, he uses his base skills as a synergist to create weapons from his own world, like revolver pistols, the minigun, katanas, a motorbike and even a military-grade jeep. Safe to say Nagumo uses the knowledge he has from the world he came from in order to help him on his journey. Next up is Ascendance of a Bookworm. When a sickly young girl suddenly becomes obsessed with inventing new things, her family and friends are all puzzled. What has gotten into mine? They wondered, never dreaming that the answer is not a what but a who. Yureno Motosu, a book-loving apprentice librarian who died in an earthquake in Tokyo, who somehow found herself in Mine's body. And since Mine's world is still in a medieval stage, where books can only be owned by the elite, the new Mine intends to do everything she can to bring her beloved books to the masses in the time she has left. The use of modern knowledge here lies in Mine herself, as she uses her knowledge from her previous life that she learned from reading books in order to better her new life. The only drawback is, the world she's now in is stuck in the feudal era where the books she loved are a rare commodity. Due to the fact that books need to be written by hand, Mine sets her goal to make books that she can read. Thus her goal to make books begins with her using her knowledge she learned in her previous life to make her books. Next is Drifters. The story centers around Shimazu Toyohisa, the real-life samurai who fought in the pivotal battle of Sekigahara. In his dying moments, Shimazu is transported to a world of magic with other famous warriors throughout history. These warriors are forced to fight each other in an endless battle. When it comes to drifters, the use of modern knowledge lies in the drifters themselves. Why is that? Well, it's because these drifters are actually people who are experts from their own time in history. Whether it's Toyohisa's skills as a samurai, Nobunaga's political and military know-how, to Yoichi's skills in survival, archery and deception, each drifter brings something to the table. Up next is Drugstore in Another World, the slow life of a cheap pharmacist. Reiji Kiryu was a corporate wage slave, who did nothing but work all day, every day. On a typical day of walking to work with a hollow look on his face, he suddenly found himself in the forest of another world. Oh, this must be one of those Isekai reincarnations people keep talking about. The two skills he has are appraise and drug discovery. Those don't sound too impressive, well, whatever. Except these turn out to be particularly overpowered skills. He's able to produce the healing medicines that were sorely lacking in the world, one after another, leading to an overnight fortune. No one will ever force him to work like a slave again. He decides to adopt a deliberately slow life, and opens a drugstore. And so, a story about following the slow life philosophy while running a drugstore in another world begins. Next up is Gate. The military fantasy series begins when a gate appears in Tokyo's Ginza district sometime in the 21st century. From the gate pours out monsters, knights from Middle-Age Europe, and other fantasy-like beings, and they kill many of the citizens of Tokyo. This event is known as the Ginza Incident. The government sends a small group of soldiers from the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, a replacement for Japan's military, to the alternate world beyond the gate. Led by otaku soldier Yuji, they find that the villages in the world are being attacked by a dragon. An elf girl, who is a survivor from the dragon's rampage, joins the group in their travels across the dangerous new world. The use of modern knowledge for Gate lies in the JSDF and the modern-day Japanese government, as two worlds with differing technologies clash. Whether it's knights with swords fighting soldiers with assault rifles, to attack helicopters taking down horse cavalry. The reactions of a world still in a feudal era to tech used by people in the modern day is quite interesting to see. This is what makes Gate such an interesting anime, because it's more of a, what if instead of sending one guy we send a modern-day military force? What could happen? Up next is, high school prodigies have it easy even in another world. 7 Japanese high school prodigies have taken the world by storm, exercising their mind-blowing abilities in everything from politics to entertainment. But when their plane crashes one day, these geniuses awaken to find themselves in a different realm, one that's home to magic and beast folk. While such strange new surroundings might throw an average person for a loop, these prodigies take their situation in stride, and then some. With the greatest minds and talents known to Earth, this dream team is about to turn the other world on its head. The modern knowledge used is in Tsukasa and his friends, as each of them brings something to the table. From Tsukasa's knowledge of politics, governing and nation-building, Ringo's inventiveness and ability to invent new technology, Shinobu's ability to gather intel and conduct espionage, Misato's trade and economic know-how, Keine's medical science knowledge, Aoi's skills as a well-trained warrior, Akatsuki's knowledge of illusions, magic tricks and sleight of hand. They each bring something to the table, in order for them to not just survive, but to eventually return back to their world. Up next is, how a realist hero rebuilt the kingdom. Suddenly summoned to a fantasy world and betrothed to the princess, Kazuya Soma is crowned the new king after providing the royal family with impressive advice. To rule the kingdom, he's taking the non-traditional, and very human, route of administrative reform. In a realm of dragons and elves, will this revolutionary's unique path prove effective? In Realist Hero, Soma brings his modern knowledge of running a country. From bringing new reforms and policies, to cleaning the Elfrieden Kingdom's financial problems. Soma himself was studying to be a public servant, before being one way sent into the world he's in now. Thus, in order for him to not just survive, he rebuilds the nation in order for it to be able to help this world deal with the problem of the new Demon King's domain. Next is, in another world with my smartphone. After a freak accident involving some lightning winds up zapping him dead, 15-year-old Mochizuki Toya wakes up to find himself face-to-face with God. I am afraid to say that I have made a bit of a blunder, laments the old coot. But all is not lost. God says that he can reincarnate Toya into a world of fantasy, and as a bonus, he gets to bring his smartphone along with. So begins Toya's adventure in a new, anachronistic pseudo-medieval world. Friends, laughs, tears, inexplicable deus ex machina. He sets off on a journey full of wonder as he absent-mindedly travels from place to place, following whatever goal catches his fancy. The curtains lift on an epic tale of swords, sorcery, and smartphone apps. The use of modern knowledge here is in Toya's smartphone, as he mainly relies on it in order to use the features and apps that God himself gave him. Needless to say, smartphone isekai is pretty generic when it comes to isekai. As the only thing that makes Toya remotely all that interesting is that he uses whatever he knows that isn't from his damn phone. I only put this here because of the smartphone and the fact that he uses his phone's features like the camera, GPS and internet. So watch this anime if you're interested. Next up is Knights and Magic. A Japanese mecha otaku dies in a car accident and his soul is reincarnated into another world as Ernesti Echeverria. Eru inherits memories and interests from his previous life, and aims to be a pilot of a silhouette knight, a large humanoid weapon that really exists in his world. The use of modern knowledge lies in Ernie himself, as he uses his knowledge as a programmer to pilot mecha robot knights. Whether it's excelling in learning about said mechas, to piloting, and even innovating mechs and creating new models. Knights and Magic offers a fantasy world with mecha elements to it, although the anime itself leaves more to be desired. Finally we have Log Horizon. The online fantasy game Elder Tales is a worldwide phenomenon, immersing millions of players in its intricately conceived virtual world. However, the release of the game's 12th expansion pack makes that immersion all too literal, as players from around the world are suddenly pulled into the game's no longer fictional universe. Now, 8-year IT veteran Shiro, his friend Natsugu, the beautiful assassin Akatsuki, and 30,000 other players are faced with the daunting task of learning how to deal with an entirely new reality, one where the non-player characters are actually alive, and the tips and tricks learned while playing with a keyboard no longer apply. The modern knowledge elements lies in Shiro, where in order for new players to be treated fairly and not to be abused, Shiro proposes that Akihabara be made in a city-state, with major guilds stand as the leaders and rulers to govern the new settlement of Akihabara. This is done not just for the latter reasons, but also for them to find a way back home to their world.